This program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
This meeting of the Eau Claire City Council will come to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Beaton.
Here.
Emmanuel. Kincaid.
Here.
Klinkhammer.
Here.
Mitchell.
Here.
Strobel.
Here.
T-Walt. Von Hayden.
Here.
Wells.
Here.
Worthman.
Here.
John.
Here.
And thank you, Madam City Clerk, and welcome everyone to the July 24th, 2017 session of the Eau Claire City Council. During its Monday night sessions, the Council listens to public input and invites public comment, in which we listen and learn and prepare ourselves for our legislative session, which convenes in these chambers tomorrow afternoon at 4 p.m. We're a little bit different than the Plan Commission in that we hold public hearings on one night and do our legislative work on the following night. So tonight we will be listening and asking some questions. For those of you, we do have some important items on our agenda, several rezonings and a public discussion about our capital improvement plan. But we do start out with a neighborhood, I think it's an update of the North Riverfront's neighborhood plan. We do welcome citizens who are joining us in chambers and are grateful to Community Television for streaming and broadcasting these proceedings for people who cannot attend in person. For those of you who wish to address the council tonight, I'll just briefly review the protocol. There are printed agendas on the back table so you know when the item that is of interest to you comes before council. The item is read into the public record and then staff makes a presentation. Sometimes council has a few questions of the staff person, and after that, then we invite public comment. When I do, you may approach the podium and state your name and your address for the public record and begin making your point. When you're done, we may have a few questions. Sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. So if you just linger at the podium for a moment, it gives me a chance to ask if we have questions of you. And we proceed that way until everyone who wants to make a comment has had a chance to make a comment. If you do wish to, if you have something to say but you don't wish to speak tonight, we do have a written option. You may fill out a blue comment sheet at the back of chambers and make your point that way and leave the paper at the back of chambers. They are distributed to us by tomorrow's meeting, so written comments bear the same weight as a spoken comment, just to accommodate people who maybe have a hard time speaking in public or feel uncomfortable. There's another avenue for you. And the city clerk makes sure that we get those by tomorrow. So with that introduction, we will start our work for the evening, which begins with item 1, which is a public hearing on the update of the North Riverfront's neighborhood plan. Mr. Noel.
Good evening, City Council.
Evening.
I have a little nervousness too, speaking in front of the public, so maybe I'll fill out my presentation on the card back there. No, it's a pleasure to be before you. Community development staff has prepared an update to the North Riverfront's plan. The last plan was in 2004, and the Plan Commission approved the update at their last meeting on July 17th, and did create one amendment to the plan, and we'll go over that through this presentation. But neighborhood planning in the city is really focused on a twofold purpose, and that's lifting up the aims and the desires of the neighborhood within the city that is looking at updating their plan or creating a plan for the first place. And then also, what are the aims and the plans of the city? and how do those work together, or how do they contrast, how do they see eye to eye. They may not always see eye to eye too. So trying to work with those interests, whether it's the cities or the neighborhood, to come up with a plan for about a 10 to 15 year time frame. And this is actually the fourth plan for the North Riverfront's neighborhood. And so there's a rich history here of involvement with the city, looking at what they can do with this older neighborhood. And as you well know, the city is very committed to inner city neighborhoods with our revitalization task force with the redevelopment authority, making sure that our existing community is well supported financially and planning. So this document, this planning process is a service that the Community Development Department provides for any neighborhood who organizes and requests and needs this service. So it's really dependent on need and purpose, and the North Riverfront, it was determined that there is a need to update their plans. So we've been working with the Neighborhood Association and a particular steering committee that represents the different interests within that neighborhood for over a year now on this plan. And now tonight it's before you for the public hearing for your consideration for a vote tomorrow. So I'm going to talk more high level at this meeting in terms of the goals, and then if you have questions about the specific policies, you can ask away on those. But to get started then, the plan actually has an executive summary that lays out real quick for reviewers, whether it's a neighbor that lives in the neighborhood, or a developer, or city staff, or whoever, city council member, whoever wants to consult the plan. The executive summary addresses on a kind of high level what's going on in the community. And so we created this nice map that shows the big highlights. And from a public investment point of view, there's some exciting things happening in this neighborhood. We have Forest Street reconstruction proposed for 2019, which has a great opportunity for reinvestment along that important corridor, for possible streetscape improvements, for just a nice inviting corridor gateway into the bulk of this neighborhood. So that's one thing that we note here along Forest Street. And then we also have heard about the proposed Veterans Tribute and what that could mean for this space, as there's a fundraising effort that's proposed for that, and how that would integrate with a multi-use trail that would go through the park and connect the High Bridge back down to Phoenix Park, and what all that means not only for the neighborhood but for the general public to transverse through this space. We have the community gardens that were created with Andrew Worthman's leadership that have been strong for the last 5, maybe 10 years almost in that space, and that brings community together. The neighborhood association has really rallied around that, and they actually operate that through an agreement with the city. So that's a highlight. And one of the big things in terms of a change in policy from the neighborhood association now is looking at redevelopment opportunities here in these 3.5 blocks along Williams Street and East Madison Street. And this is a bit of a reversal in terms of that they're looking more for redevelopment opportunities. The redevelopment authority does own a couple lots in there. It's part of TID 8 and has some ability to, based off the private sector, look for new opportunities for redevelopment. They're open to multi-use buildings, apartments, townhomes, opportunities for families to also live in new construction. Incidentally, the last new building that was built in this neighborhood was in 1930. So they're really eager for reinvestment from whether it's a single family home or apartments, and capitalizing on the momentum that is part of North Barstow. So this plan lays out those strategies. If we get in the goals here, again in the executive summary, we talk about 10 main goals. Provide quality housing. Again, the average age of structures within this neighborhood is 130 years, so they're really looking for new investment, whether it's remodeling projects or brand new structures that property owners want to build there. Increase home ownership rates. That's really important because over the last 10 years, the rental versus home ownership equation or ratio has remained the same, which is good in the sense that it hasn't gotten more rentals, but it's about 80-20 in terms of more renters than homeowners. So they'd like to reverse that to a certain degree and stabilize more home ownership. Encourage growth and redevelopment. We talked about that a little bit along East Madison and also Williams Street, that would be the most logical place for redevelopment on a larger scale. That would be more driven by the private sector that would work with those landowners to make sure that they're willing to sell and assemble those properties, rather than at this time the city deciding to go for those properties. Enhance parks, so looking at Forest Street, I talked about the Veterans Tribute and what could be done there, and then also with the streetscape improvements, a part of Forest Street, and how that will beautify Forest Street, the sixth goal. Prevent crime, this is a higher crime area in the city. The neighborhood meetings that we had as we developed this plan, they were very well represented by the district lieutenant and police officers. We probably had sometimes almost the same amount of police officers at our meetings than actual steering committee members. So the police department really showed a commitment to coverage there and responding to their interests. Proactive code enforcement. So again, with older properties, a lot of landlords is dealing with nuisances and things like that to make sure that there's a clean and positive image within this neighborhood to attract that reinvestment, to encourage homeowners and renters to also keep up with their properties. And then engage residents. There's a solid core of leadership on this neighborhood association, but there's only a few, and we know that it takes sustained momentum to continue on investing in a place and that leadership. And so what can the neighborhood do, and how can this plan help to engage new folks to the table to help represent their needs and interests in North Riverfronts? And then marketplace. They feel that just being juxtaposed between downtown, bookending downtown, that's really an advantage to them because they're able to capitalize on Phoenix Park and all the momentum, the jobs, the walkability, close to healthcare, the rivers, the trails, all those great things that are happening in downtown. And so they're really at a strategic advantage in location to capitalize on that momentum and that reinvestment occurring in downtown. So this plan really lays that out and hopefully encourages the private sector, developers, builders, homeowners, the neighborhood association to work together to continue to reinvest in this plan. So the plan was also developed with kind of a marketing edge to try to help encourage those folks to, again, to reinvest in this place. So with that, that's high level, the policies, the goals, the issues. The policies were driven by the issues, the problems that are, in many cases long-standing in this neighborhood, but to try to address those in some fresh ways, especially folding in our work with the Neighborhood Revitalization Task Force, some of the different concepts, whether maybe capturing some of an increment for 1 year after a TID closes. So some different ideas there that are for exploration in this plan and can also be leveraged for other places like Randall Park neighborhood. So if there's any questions of staff based off of this plan, the development, the policies, the issues, we're here to help.
Thank you, Mr. Noel. Councilmember Strobel has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Noel. I didn't see in here, and maybe it wasn't, but a lot of the other neighborhoods that were sort of close to the downtown when they've come forward with neighborhood plans, and maybe this was done previously, had looked at some type of zoning changes or down zoning or anything like that. Did you look at that this time through? I didn't see any of those proposed changes coming through. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, the last neighborhood plan in 2004, one of the big projects was a down zoning of this neighborhood. So the bulk of the properties, they were R4, R3 higher density, and that didn't match up with the existing uses. There's single family homes, there's duplexes, and would create some nonconformities, setbacks, and different uses. And so staff, we worked with the neighborhood association to down zone those properties to what we call residential mixed. And so that is more appropriate for the type of land uses. So that work's been done, and now we're just talking about some other rezonings that are smaller on scale, potentially private sector driven, along this stretch again, maybe going back to R3, R4, or maybe CBD, Central Business District. And then also the Walters Brewery site, and that location is zoned industrial still, legacy property. And so looking there for possibly R3, the plan calls that out in terms of those rezonings.
Other questions? Councilmember Worthman.
Thank you, Council President. Mr. Noel, thank you for presenting tonight. Thank you for your work helping to compile and configure this plan. I wanted to just ask, first of all, and we had conversations back and forth about the continuity of the neighborhood and the fact that as the area to the south, Madison Street area, Wisconsin Street is being redeveloped. the Phoenix Park apartments, there's a lot more residential in that area, and I think this goes to Councilmember Strobel's question, but, you know, in terms of trying to create that continuity, because there is a great deal more residential, you know, development happening in that area. And I know that you had specifically said that because the downtown, the map of the downtown and the way that it's zoned, you know, currently prohibits it, you know, that they couldn't be connected. But I wonder if there is some way to do that, or what your recommendations are, you know, to try to look at doing that. And also knowing that there are likely, I believe, other areas of our downtown, and thinking across the river potentially, where neighborhoods actually do overlay on our downtown map.
Yeah, it's a good question. And the Plan Commission, they actually recommended looking at the boundary issue. They voted to amend the plan to reference in the resolution that the boundaries, this particular area in question in pink, would be addressed in the 2020 comprehensive plan update. And that's important too, because there are some issues when we talk about boundaries and the downtown and what's going on there too. This is just the DECI, the assessed value that we check out for downtown's growth and the investment that's going into it. And you know, this isn't a planning boundary, but it shows that there's just some differences between actual consideration of where downtown is, where the neighborhoods are, even Randall Park, if you look over here. And so I think in 2020, that's an opportunity to look at these things more holistically, include the interests of DECI and the bids that represent, and consider, you know, how does this all interplay, and where are these hard and fast boundaries from a plan point of view, but also socially. We know that North Riverfronts Association already is working well together with the Phoenix Park Urbanites. They have joint events, and a plan doesn't have to push that. That's great in terms of happening organically. And so when we get back to this plan, we've always taken it from the point of view of, you know, there's different land uses going on between the neighborhood and then downtown. Downtown has higher intensity uses from office, parking, destinations, and so that's a lot more activity and traffic than the neighborhood at large, where we have more housing and people want it more quiet and not a lot of through traffic. And so how do we deal with those issues? Our recommendation from staff was to leave it as is, and then the Plan Commission decided to, well, let's relook at this in 2020. So from a planning point of view, we often think very puristic with land uses, but we know that there's more to the story. And so that was a recommendation that's also in your City Council resolution for consideration tomorrow night. But that's up to you, Council, to decide if that makes sense or not to explore in 2020. So if that answers your question.
Yeah, that's very helpful. And I apologize, I wasn't aware that the Plan Commission had made that recommendation. And it's a difficult thing too, because it's clear that there's, you know, uses in Phoenix Park and the Phoenix Park area clearly don't just remain in that area. And so, and it's sort of both ways, you know, I mean, whether there's events or parking issues or you know, development issues, I don't, it's hard to sort of draw a neat boundary and say this is neighborhood, this is not neighborhood. And I know that that's sort of the challenge here. If I may, with the second question, just wanted to bring up one of the things that has been an issue is the intersection of Galloway and Dewey. And I had a resident who contacted me about sort of the safety of that, and there's actually been a number of times that I've been contacted about the safety of that intersection and what can be done to bring more safety to it. Can you speak to that a little bit? Yeah,
that's you know, more the Public Works Department, the engineering department, to really study that and to understand turning movements and user projections in terms of automobile traffic and trail. We noted in the plan here is a planning issue that needs to be addressed from safety, from usability point of view, and so it's called out in the plan, but really defers back to the appropriate staff to study that issue, to come to some conclusions about what needs to change.
Thank you. Questions, others? I see none. The council thanks you, as always, for a very thorough and passionate work. Are there members of the public then who wish to speak to the North Riverfronts Neighborhood Plan?
Hello, so I'm Bob Schroffnagel at 529 Hobart Street. I am also the treasurer of the Neighborhood Association and was on the steering committee that helped Ned with the drafting of this plan. So I guess I really want to voice our support for the boundary change amendment so that we can at least revisit this issue during the next comprehensive plan cycle. Obviously, we'd like to have it done now, but at least if we keep this issue open and address it later, that'd be sufficient for us. Our current neighborhood plan states that the two sections of our neighborhood should be joined in the middle through the downtown area. And we were disappointed when the initial draft of this came out and said that it should not be. So we felt that was a giant step backwards, and we're happy to see that at least we'll talk about this again during the next comprehensive plan cycle. Okay, thank you.
Question for
Sure.
you, Mr. Schroffnagel, Councilmember Mitchell.
Thank you. Regarding some of the other issues in the plan, on page 29, there's a whole list of the issues that were identified in the process. Could you speak about which of those issues might be the most, I could say, important or the most basic to be sure they get done, and then solutions to the others would follow?
I think the biggest issue that we have is probably just investment in the neighborhood. It's been getting a lot better, but there are a fair amount of properties that do need repair and are in disrepair. And I think that just kind of creates a negative neighborhood attitude. And it's, crime is probably right in there with it. I don't feel our neighborhood's really unsafe, but there's obviously a perception that there's a lot of crime and it's unsafe. And we'd like to, we feel like making the housing stock better would help with that appearance issue, and hopefully, encourage some redevelopment, some better housing stock, and, obviously, more people and more proactive activities would help with the issues that we do have.
May I ask another?
Sure.
And is that a problem primarily with the rental properties or homeowners, or both? Or?
I would say it's primarily at the rental properties, but there are only a handful of problem houses, and they are the houses that are in the worst repair, and it's really kind of isolated to one specific area in the neighborhood as well. So, we know what the problem is and where the problem is, but it's just how do you redevelop that, or how do you encourage better upkeep of those properties, I guess, is really the issue that we have to figure out.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Worthman.
Thank you, Council President. Mr. Schroffnagel, thank you for your work on this and your leadership in the neighborhood. It's my impression that some of the issues of that neighborhood have to do with the taverns as well. Is your perception that the taverns play a part of it, or not necessarily?
Currently, I don't really feel that that's much of an issue. I mean, I feel I've been in there for almost 20 years, and when I first moved in there, it was a very different place. And, I feel that the new taverns like the Livery and Stella Blues, which are primarily restaurants, have actually helped with the positive influence of the area. Mm-hmm. The Wigwam was pretty sketchy when I moved into the neighborhood, and that's really under new ownership now. And it's, there are people who walk through the neighborhood drinking. There are people who throw empty glass bottles, but it's not nearly as bad as it is in the student housing neighborhoods, in my opinion. And we don't usually have that big of a problem with that at this point. Mm-hmm. Up in the other side of the neighborhood, the Alba Room we had some issues with noise, but they recently built a wall around their outdoor smoking area, and that has helped a lot.
It's better. Thanks.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Could I ask one more? It'd be number 3, I'm sorry, but I asked you about issues, but I also wanted to refer to the set of neighborhood assets, which is on page 51, and pretty impressive. And you have one of the greatest assets of the city, that iconic High Bridge as
Oh, yeah.
as part of the neighborhood. And I'm not sure if people always connect the existence of that with the neighborhood itself. It's sort of part of the park maybe, but up there past the shops.
Right.
Did you talk about a way to make that connection stronger?
Well, that bridge actually is not in our neighborhood boundary, to my knowledge. Well, it's on the edge. I didn't realize our neighborhood went way up to Cascades, but we think that the Veterans Trail proposal, I mean, it's always been on our master plan to build the bike trail to connect the underpass on Madison Street to that bridge. And it's been years since we developed that master plan, as even predated the gardens. So I guess we're just hoping that the Veterans Trail will finally let us see that trail connect to our neighborhood. And that's really going to be the connection, because that's right on the edge of our neighborhood. It's right down that beautiful piece of property right along the Chippewa River next to the community gardens. I mean, it's going to be a big asset. And honestly, access to the bike trail is one of the reasons that I live in that neighborhood, so. Yeah.
I see no further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work. Other people? Mhm.
I'm Ann Dome, and I live at 658 Galloway Street, and I've been there for 27 years, so part of the neighborhood. So this has been really important with this plan. This is the second one I've worked on, and our feeling is with the plan that we have now, let's see, where am I at? So I live right over here on Galloway Street, and we have houses up here that are not part of our plan. So it's like, and then we have houses up here, we have apartments and houses up here. So I'm addressing this section, even though this is, but it's kind of like we don't connect, so we get forgotten over here. But we have houses that don't belong. And so our concern too was with the stuff down at Phoenix Park, that a lot of people are staying there, us baby boomers are going to these areas. They need to connect because that is their home. And part of our neighborhood is having more homes and having people more connected to their properties. And we felt that that would be just doing that boomerang, doing that would be really important. So addressing this in 2020 is important to us. The other thing is, when Andrew, you talked about the tavern, yes, we do have a problem with the elbow room. When you talk about taverns, it's better. But they built a fence saying the neighborhood agreed. They never talked to the neighborhood. They never came to us. So yes, taverns, when you get down into this area, may be a problem. And it's that we have to have connection with the businesses, which usually we have in the past with Smiling Moose. They've supported us. So we do have a little bit of an issue, but it seems once they put the fence up, even though we didn't have any input on it, but it's fine now. They seem to keep the noise down. But we just wanted the connectivity to keep that going with homes.
Okay, thank you, Ms.
Thanks.
Dome. Thank you.
Tammy Schraffnagel, 529 Hobart Street, Neighborhood Association Chair at this point. I want to thank Kathy Mitchell for her amendment to the resolution that really does put a lot of angst or forward movement on resolving the boundaries. And I really hope that that is taken up in 2020. The neighborhood itself did in 2013, if you read the correspondence that was forwarded on to you, took a vote and voted to have the Phoenix Park area, the area of the Chippewa River and the Eau Claire River included in the neighborhood association based on what staff was advising us in 2013. We're willing to wait. We're willing to work with the Downtown Eau Claire Inc. and with the North Barstow bid to make that happen in the future. one of the things that we had cited was the loss of the housing on Forest Street from the floods of the 90s. And in this neighborhood plan, you'll also note that the Sarah Street area is possibly going to be picked off one by one for city redevelopment for the city shops. So we'll be losing more properties potentially down the line. And I want to see us expand our area down into the Phoenix Park area and connect the boundaries with, even if we use the parks and the trails to do so, if we can't actually get the footprint of the North Barstow bid as part of the neighborhood, but connect the areas where housing is and it's not represented, and unify that boundary, because I don't believe there's any other neighborhood association in the city of Eau Claire that has 2 parcels. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Wortham.
Thank you, Council President. Ms. Schroffnagel, I know that one of the issues that you brought to the council in the past has to do with parking. And are you seeing that that issue is getting better over the last few years because we built a massive ramp and there's a plan that we're following to hopefully alleviate it? What do you think of the parking issue? It does seem like it's getting a little better.
People in Eau Claire really hate paying for parking. The ramp has, during daytime, taken capacity away as far as people who have jobs downtown. The minute there's a farmer's market, Taste of the Valley, even, well, the summer concert series, our green space on Forest Street is parked to the hilt. Citizens have figured out a way to come up with rows and rows of parking on City of Eau Claire and XL Energy property that isn't sanctioned by the city. I hope our police officers pay attention. Because they have recently put no parking up and down the gravel road, and I don't know if that's going to happen continuing. It was set up for one event, your wedding. And I hope that we're able to encourage people to park in the ramp and in the 700 block if that's open for citizens.
Thank you, Ms. Schroffnagel. Anyone else here tonight to speak to the neighborhood plan?
Hello, Jeremy Gregor at 451 Lincoln Avenue, actually in the 3rd Ward, but I frequent this neighborhood, so I had some thoughts and some perspectives as far as some of the transportation challenges that are noted here, as that's my main interest in front of you most of the time. So some of them to point out that I would like to provide some of my perspective on are the mentioned earlier that the intersection of Galloway and Dewey, the trail that goes through there, there's obviously a lot of pretty serious talk about moving it out of that intersection, which I think would be good. But I think that even when that is done, there'll be a lot of issues with people being able to walk or bike through that intersection and take all of the different directions that people need to do to get where they need to go at that intersection. So even if the trail is not there, I think it's still a problematic intersection, the way it's designed and some of the geography. And I know that the city's looking at not allowing parking on certain places to improve some of the sight lines, but ultimately I think a 4-way stop sign, a 4-way stop would be the way to see what we can do in a meaningful way that would change the situation, because that would really slow down traffic and allow cars to even move through a little bit easier because people will be able to stop and then look and do the turning movements more safely. So that's something I would really like this plan to push forward, and it sounds like it's asking that to happen. I know Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Commission is also looking at this in their update of their bicycle and pedestrian plan. So So that's one item. And I do want to show my excitement for this trail idea from Phoenix Park to the High Bridge. I think that sounds like it would happen with the Forest Street reconstruction in 2019 or sometime around then. So that's really cool. I just want to show my support for that. There's one thing that I thought was somewhat peculiar about the plan related to transit. There was a section that's page 73, policy number C1. It says continue to invest in transit for the neighborhood. Unfortunately, the Transit Commission just recently made a decision to reduce transit service on Route 4, which goes right through the northern section of the neighborhood here. And here's, try to hold it so it's not super glary, but the bus currently goes up through Mount Simon area via Forest Street and Barstow, but then and goes through Mount Simon, and it comes back that way as well. So once an hour, it actually goes. So every hour, the bus goes through twice, but they've just changed it so that it goes up Madison Street and over to Woodman's on its way out of downtown. So it only comes back through the neighborhood. So it reduces transit service by half in terms of frequency for that northern section of the neighborhood. So in terms of those kind of changes don't exactly fit with the plan. So I think that kind of makes me think we need to really refocus on what Eau Claire Transit can do and what the city can do to follow the plan here going forward. Because I do think that neighborhood is in need of good public transit. The final thing would be that I think one of the reasons why there's a divide going on in the planning efforts over the years is I think that there's some barriers in the downtown area like Madison Street here and Farwell here that really create a difficult way it's very difficult for people to walk and bike across those roads. And they create a physical barrier just as a river does in some ways. So I think in order for this neighborhood to really feel cohesive and safe and be able to work better with the rest of what I think should be one neighborhood with the more downtownish part, we really need to address some of the safety issues and the accessibility issues of Farwell Street and Madison Street. So I'm hoping those things can be addressed as part of this whole package here. So I wanted to mention all that stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gert. I see no questions for you.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else here to comment on the neighborhood plan? If not, the chair will close item 1. We do have a decision point on this neighborhood plan tomorrow at our legislative session. Item 2 tonight begins a series of zoning hearings with a public hearing on the proposed ordinance rezoning property at 1302 115th Street from I-2 to R1A. Mr. Tufte.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This is the property. It's located off of 115th Street, just south of Melby, National Presto site. And the aerial shows most of the surrounding land is vacant. There's a storage building to the north. There are some homes in the village of Lake Hallie to the north and east. It's a 9-acre site. Applicant intends to build a home on the site. The comprehensive plan identifies the area as being appropriate for low-density residential development. There is no sewer and water available to the site. The proposed R1A zoning of the property is consistent with areas that do not have sewer and water available, and the Plan Commission has recommended approval.
Questions? Councilmember Von Hayden.
Just for my own edification on this, when you say that means there will be no water and sewer out there, they will have their own septic system, or does that mean we have to get water and sewer to them?
They'll have their own septic system and wells.
Okay, I just wanted that for clarity. Where is the nearest water and sewer?
About there.
Oh.
Or way down here. quite a ways.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? I see none. Thank you. Is anyone here to speak about the rezoning on 115th Street? I see none, so I will close item 2. Item 3 is a public hearing on a proposed ordinance rezoning property located at the southeast corner of I-94 and Highway 93 from TR Temporary Residential 1A to C3P Commercial 3 Planned, and to adopt a general development plan. Mr. Tufti.
This is the property. It's located at the southeast quadrant of I-94, Highway 93. There is commercial zoning to the south and across to the west. It's an aerial photo then of the site. It shows the commercial uses to the south, to the west. There are residential uses to the east. Vacant land up here. This is the general development plan for the property that's in your packet. It shows us the large retail use on the main lot for the property. Shows no new right-of-way for the relocation of Old Town Hall Road. 3 lots then to the west of the relocated Old Town Hall Road. One is an outlot for stormwater purposes. One is a convenience store car wash that would be built associated with the primary use. And the third is then a future lot for future development. With the relocated right-of-way then, it shows the development parcels, the existing right-of-way, and then the proposed vacation of right-of-way in blue, which is the existing location of Old Town Hall Road that they're proposing to vacate and relocate to the east. And then this is the detailed site plan that's in the packet. It was reviewed by Plan Commission, showing Fleet Farm on the property with its parking lot to the front, the relocated Old Town Hall Road, city stormwater, the car wash, convenience store, future lot for future development. This is a 218,628 square foot Fleet Farm. This is a 4,905 square foot convenience store car wash. There's also project narratives that were provided by applicant that are within your packet. In terms of the rezoning, the comprehensive plan does identify this site as being appropriate for commercial development. There are commercial uses to the south and across the highway to the west. There are residential uses to the east, although you'll note there's a 30 to 50 foot grade change between those properties that should provide buffering for those existing residential uses. The narrative that was provided by applicants states they are proposing R3P zoning for some future residential development on this site. That is not part of this application, and that statement in that narrative needs to be corrected. In terms of the general development plan, again, it shows the large building on Lot 1, the smaller building on Lots 2, a future development on Lot 3, the outlot as being dedicated. It shows setbacks of 50 feet from the state right-of-way, 20 feet from all other right-of-ways, 25 feet from that west lot line since it's abutting a residential use. Old Town Hall Road then is proposed to be vacated, and we showed that in terms of the blue. That will require City Council consideration as a separate hearing later this summer because of hearing notification requirements. The new alignment of Town Hall Road is proposed to be dedicated. The Plan Commission has recommended, and the City Council is recommended to accept that right-of-way dedication as part of this general development plan. The site plan, a narrative that was shown to the Plan Commission, is also within your report for this project. The Plan Commission did recommend approval of the rezoning and general development plan with a set of conditions that are noted in your report. Those conditions include revise the project narrative to eliminate all references to the future residential project. With its review of the general development plan, the Plan Commission is recommending the street vacation. Again, council will need a separate hearing on that later this summer. With its review of the general development plan, the Plan Commission and City Council approves the right-of-way dedication for the new alignment of Old Town Hall Road, which we're showing on the general development plan, and then compliance with the recommended conditions in the city engineer's report. City engineer's report has a list of 6 conditions. Those conditions include completing a traffic impact analysis for this proposed development, then dedicating the right-of-way to construct Lorch Avenue and Old Town Hall Road as identified in that traffic impact analysis, then entering into a development agreement for street, sidewalk, and utility improvements, and including in that development agreement the funding for any traffic capacity improvements identified as necessary by the traffic impact analysis, providing stormwater calculations and WSDOT review of this development plan. The Plan Commission recommended approval with that set of conditions, and then they did approve the site plan with the conditions that are in the draft letter to applicant, which we also included in your packet. And with that, I'd answer any questions.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Thank you. Mr. Tufte, is the TIA done?
The TIA was provided to engineering staff. Engineering staff has commented and asked for revisions and has been sent back to applicants, so it's well on its way. It's probably the best way to describe it.
Councilmember Von Hayden.
Just, I think it was said that in the development plan, this cost of moving the street out there, what they'll dedicate, and the new street will be the cost of the development or the project?
It'll be put into a development agreement, which is considered by City Council. Council has final decision on the development agreement. Likely, most of the cost will be borne by the developer. There may be some costs in there in terms of oversizing of utilities that the city normally pays for.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Mr. Tufte. The sewer and water that's being proposed to service this, would that be sufficient to service the future development too then, or?
The existing sewer and water on Lorch, the sewer sufficient. The water, they are looking at extending high-capacity water main over to the site. High capacity is needed for water pressure. As you get up in elevation, you don't have adequate water, and that is looking at across a Benridge property here, coming underneath interstate. It not only provides services for this project, but also future development south of I-94.
So it would be sufficient if they did that?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I see no further questions. Are there members of the public tonight who came to speak on this development? Speak about, I guess, this development. Mr. Gregert?
Hello, thank you. Jeremy Gregert at 451 Lincoln Avenue. I wanted to give some perspective as a bicyclist and someone who walks and takes transit around, and the kind of the impact of this large commercial property development will have on that potentially. So I brought the Chippewa Valley bike map, which is something that citizens came together to make happen and kind of show the public the best ways to walk, mostly to bike around. And I wanted to show that Highway 93 is kind of like a very key entrance and exit to the city, somewhat of an escape route, I guess you could say, where if you want to ride your bike out of town or into town, you cannot go through Highway 53's interchange because it turns into a freeway at the roundabout there. So a lot of people who may live out here or are biking out in this area have to get routed toward along Old Town Hall Road and up the bike trail, or go on a very hilly and more narrow stretch of road down here. So I have an interest in keeping this area more bike friendly. The blue on the map, which I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see, are the most bike-friendly roads. The orange are kind of more medium comfort level for biking. And then this little dashed red locations, as you can see on Gulf Road by 93, are kind of like the important connections for biking, but they're really not very good for biking, somewhat dangerous, but you still need them to connect. The green, you can see the trail along the east side of 93. The project area that's in question here is right in that location. And with a residential development in the future, we could see more people biking from the area as well. So I guess my main concern is that we have to make sure that we have enough right-of-way for Old Town Hall Road to be able to accommodate people walking and biking, and so putting in a trail or putting in bike lanes on that stretch of road would be a very important thing to do. At this point, as was said earlier, the decision about the exact design of that road and that right-of-way and such don't appear to be happening like at this meeting tonight, which is good. We have some time. But I think we do have to start looking at it now and making sure we're planning for it, and that we have the correct amount of right-of-way to be able to provide bike lanes or a trail. And also that little section of Lorch Avenue, which is right here, will need to have a trail or bike lanes to be able to connect the trail on 93 to Old Town Hall Road, and then therefore Fleet Farm and whatever else is built out there. So I'm kind of wondering if there's an answer to the question that I've been posing for the last week to Plan Commission and also to engineers, if there is yet a defined roadway width. I've seen in some documents that it was 42 feet for Old Town Hall Road, and then the right-of-way would be 66 feet. But according to the document, it was not clear like whether bike lanes or a trail would really fit within those parameters, or if those parameters have now changed to different widths. So I'm not sure if anyone can answer what the proposed right-of-way is and what the proposed roadway width is for Old Town Hall Road.
The members of the city council would not be able to answer that question. And if you've been speaking to city engineering for a week, I would suggest that you return to a conversation with the city engineers as this site plan develops and the public infrastructure as a part of the site plan. Right now, no member of this body knows what the proposed width of Old Town Hall Road is.
Okay. So is a specific right-of-way going to be set by this meeting tonight?
No.
Okay. So, but the site plan is set.
The general development plan.
Okay.
We will be addressing tomorrow. It's a general development plan. As far as I understand general development plans, it would not set the road right of way.
Okay. All right.
I suggest that
That's
you
good.
continue talking with city staff, the engineering staff, as the public infrastructure develops as a part of the private development.
All right. Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else here to speak to the Fleet Farm development? Seeing none, we'll close item 3 and bring our attention to our last zoning item tonight, which is a public hearing on a proposed ordinance rezoning property located on the north side of Stonewood Drive, east of Mill Run Road, from C2P to R3P with a general development plan for a memory care and assisted living facility, and approving a CBRF with a capacity for 60 persons, granting an exception to the 2,500-foot requirement. Mr. Tufti.
This is the property. It's located on the north side of Stonewood Drive, east of Mill Run Road, south of US Highway 12. There is residential zoning across the road to the south. And this is an aerial photo of the property. There's a condominium project across the road to the south. It has approval to double its size. And then there is approval for Beehive, which has started construction of an assisted living and memory care facility on these two parcels. And this is the general development plan then showing the access to the parking to Stonewood Drive and the layout of the memory care and assisted living facility on the property. And this is a rezoning, general development plan, CBRF review for capacity for 60 persons and an exception to the 2,500 foot requirement. There's a narrative provided by applicant explaining this facility within your packet. It's a 42,000 square foot CBRF. It's one story. It has 60 total beds. 40 are for assisted living and 20 are for memory care. In terms of the rezoning, the comprehensive plan designates this site as being appropriate for commercial development. There is policy within the comprehensive plan text that states in areas designated as commercial on the planned land use map, the city will consider residential zoning based on the following factors, and those are listed in your report. Stonewood Drive is a short cul-de-sac with residential projects already approved on the south side of the street. The Plan Commission believed this project will create an attractive residential environment, that it will have less impacts on residential uses than commercial development in this location, and that it will have little traffic impacts. In terms of this general development plan, again, you'll note the access to the project is provided off of Stonewood Drive. It again establishes 50-foot setbacks along the state right-of-way, 20-foot setbacks along the other streets. And the narrative that was provided by applicant notes that most persons that live in this facility do not drive, and the parking needs for this facility is limited to visitors and staff, which they anticipate will be about 12 people. It is noted that final site plans will require Plan Commission review consistent with this general development plan if council approves of this project. In terms of the CBRF, Wisconsin statutes allows CBRFs within a community if they have 16 units or smaller within a multifamily area, and if they're not within 2,500 feet of an existing CBRF. This is a project for 60 units, and it is within 2,500 foot of another CBRF right across the road, and that's why they are asking for this exception. We placed in your report the provisions for review of an exception or special zoning permission. For this request, it is proposed to be a 60-unit assisted living and memory care facility. It will have little traffic impacts. The use will be compatible with existing and planned residential uses to the south, and there are adequate city services provided to the site. We also attach the city engineer's report concerning those city services. Plan Commission did recommend approval of the rezoning and the community-based residential facility exception with conditions. One, final site plans consistent with the general development plan will require Plan Commission review, and then compliance with the recommendations in the city engineer's report, which address drainage to the site, and will require this project to enter into a development agreement with the city to provide paratransit services. We did receive one letter in opposition to the request, and that was placed in your packet. Are there any questions?
Councilmember Emanuel.
Thank you, Madam President. Have you heard from folks outside of the writers who wrote the letter of opposition who might be able to talk about demand of memory care units in our community and if we have a shortage?
I haven't heard, we didn't hear from any folks at the Plan Commission hearing. I've heard from folks coming into our office because we have at least 3 or 4 other facilities looking for sites within our community. So based on that contact, I believe there is a demand for more facilities within our community.
Councilmember Well.
Thank you, Council President. So the state statute, the 2,500-foot limitation, is that just to prevent saturation, or what's the reasoning behind that?
The Plan Commission's review, and I would agree with the Plan Commission, is it has to do with compatibility more than saturation. They believe that competitiveness within these facilities is good. That's capitalism, and that the provisions in our code is to make sure that it doesn't place too many of these facilities within a neighborhood and then create compatibility issues within that neighborhood.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Tufte, CBRFs can serve a variety of populations.
Yes.
Not just this population.
Yes,
If you might.
most of those we've seen recently are for elderly care, but they can have folks with addiction issues or early release prisoners. We haven't seen many of those within our community in the past 10 years. So.
Mr. Nick.
Just a quick concurrence, but I agree with Mr. Tufte. That setback rule and really your other zoning issues are about compatibility, use, issues, and how this proposed use fits in with this neighborhood and into the city in general. We had similar issues raised in another recent medical facility that I'm sure you recall in terms of whether another hospital might be needed in the community, and that sort of economic need or competitiveness issue is really not one that's before you on a zoning or a rezoning.
Thank you. If there aren't any other questions, do you mind just reviewing how the paratransit agreement, how
Sure.
does that play out?
There's two other facilities in this area. Both have entered into paratransit agreements. Both state they will provide their own rides for their folks that live in their facilities. However, these folks still have the ability to call the city for paratransit service. And the agreement is set up, since we don't have paratransit service out there and would have to extend it under our federal contracts, that these facilities will pay for that if we end up having to drive out there and provide that service. It usually doesn't happen simply because they have their own vans and take care of it on their own.
So if I recall right, when we were going through the paratransit discussions of some years back, we set up a backdrop, I guess, a stopgap, a way to be sure that there was paratransit service.
Mm-hmm.
And the developer either provides their own, or there's this stopgap thing that we.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And do we enter into the contract with the provider, or does the facility? How does that go?
They will have to come forward with a development agreement, as the other facilities did sometime prior to final site plans being approved. That agreement's considered by council, and it basically will state that you provide your own service, and if we have to provide it for you, then you're paying for that cost to the city.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Councilmember Emanuel?
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you for that question. It reminded me I had a question about that very topic as well. So if I understand the packet correctly, they're indicating they're not going to come forth with a paratransit plan. So do I have the correct understanding of the?
No. They expect that they'll have their own services with this facility, and they will expect they'll enter into that agreement that if folks need to use our service, they would pay for it. But they don't expect that's going to happen, because they'll have their vans out there providing the service if it is needed.
Thank you for the clarification. That's my misunderstanding of it. Thank
Okay.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? I see none. Thank you. I believe there are members of the public who, well, I don't know. Are there members of the public, I shouldn't presume, who came tonight to speak about this proposed rezoning?
Hello, I'm Ken Kozakowski with Consolidated Construction. I'm the architect for the developer on the project. And just to add to what Mr. Tufte said, it is a CBRF for the care of the elderly. It's not for the other uses that were mentioned. And as a low-impact residential use, it actually creates a nice buffer between US 12 and the residents to the south of the Stonewood Drive. There are members of Care Partners here as well as our civil engineer if you have questions for them. Care Partners is already operating in the community and understand the market, and they're comfortable with the unit count and the needs. So any questions for me or anyone else, let me know.
I see no questions. If it said in your narrative, I missed when you would anticipate opening your doors.
We would like to open probably April, May, depending on how our schedule pans out of next year.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So, all right.
Thank you. And I do see no further questions, so thank you for coming forward. Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Anyone else to speak tonight? Seeing none, the chair will close item 4 then. And we have one item for a public discussion tonight, which is a little bit different than a hearing. Imperceptibly, I might say, though. Our last item tonight, anyway, is a public discussion on the proposed 2018-2022 capital improvement plan. Mr. Winzens.
Ms. Merle needs a moment, so I will speak extemporaneously to you all. Before you this evening is your consideration of the 2018 through 2022 capital improvement plan. The process of developing this CIP started back in March when the Finance Department and City staff met to have our kickoff meeting. And we've received input from the City Council through several work sessions, beginning back in April, on April 25th, and additional work sessions during the month of May. In addition, the capital improvements plan has been reviewed by the Plan Commission, the Transit Commission, as well as Parks and Waterways. So has been through a fairly thorough review process with several opportunities along the way for members of the public to comment on the proposed plan. Just a little high-level review of what's contained in the document. Looking at the entire plan as a whole, the sources of funding for projects proposed for 2018. The largest portion of funds is proposed to come from the issuance of debt, that's about 64% of the proposed funding in this plan. The use of cash or funds on hand represents about 33% of the projects in this proposed plan, and then much smaller amounts comprise the balance with intergovernmental aids as well as tax increment and interest. If we look at the proposed uses of funds, or if we categorize the projects within the CIP, the 2018 projects, most of them are comprised of what we would call maintenance or replacement projects. This is taking care of our basic infrastructure, our buildings, really facilities that we already have within the community that need to be maintained in a safe and functional condition. And those projects comprise about 67% of the projects proposed for 2018 in the CIP. Those new types of projects, new public facilities, new streets, new pedestrian bridges, those types of activities comprise about 33% of the projects proposed for 2018 in this CIP. If we take a look just very specifically at the projects within that maintenance and repair category, we can see that most of them involve the city's infrastructure. Like I said, streets, parking lots, buildings, not buildings, streets, parking lots, those sorts of infrastructure items, also our utilities, water and sewer. Those make up about 57% of the repair and maintenance items. Public buildings and facilities comprise about 20% of the items in the CIP, and then equipment and technology about 22.5%, the majority of the equipment and technology being vehicle replacements. If we look at the infrastructure type improvements, most of those are, as I indicated, transportation related. Almost $10 million of the 2018 CIP would fall into that transportation category. Maintenance of our water system at nearly $2.3 million. Our stormwater system at about $1.6 million. Sewer system at $1.4 million, and parks at about $38,000. So overall, in terms of our repair and maintenance, it's a pretty basic CIP in terms of taking care of our infrastructure that we have in place and making sure it continues to be in good repair. Within the category of public buildings and facilities, the largest single element within that category is City Hall, or the municipal building, and we continue to make improvements to this building so that it can continue to be our home for a long time. Also, the library and fire stations are the two next largest items within the repair and maintenance category. Within equipment and technology, as I indicated, central maintenance at about $2 million is the single largest category within equipment and technology. In addition, we have fire services at a little bit over $1.16 million. And for fire services, that is the replacement of fire equipment. I believe we've got an aerial ladder scheduled for replacement in 2018. The next largest category is our management information systems, and this is the network and the infrastructure that we rely upon to do our jobs every day. It's a whole series of servers in our data center, which is really the backbone of city operations, and it's the continued maintenance and upgrade of that system so that it continues to be reliable and free of outside threats. If we look at our category of new investments, so we're shifting now from repair and maintenance. New investments, nearly 65% of our new investments fall into the category of economic development and redevelopment. The next largest category would be public buildings and facilities, followed by infrastructure. So if we take a little bit deeper dive into each of these pies, slices of the pie, new investments are infrastructure. About $1.3 million of that in 2018 is proposed for the Dewey Street underpass. So that is by far the single largest new investment in infrastructure. Within public buildings and facilities, we have investments for $220,000 for our transit system for bus shelters, but by far and away the largest single element within that new investment category is parks and recreation. So that's the single largest category within the new investments. Again, looking at equipment and technology, that particular item has a whole series of projects, none of which are particularly large. But parking is the largest element within equipment and technology, and this is really upgrading the parking control system at the Gibson ramp and continuing to upgrade the system at the new ramp. So this is probably the single largest element within the equipment and technology category. And last but not least, economic development and redevelopment. As I indicated, this is the largest component of the new investments in the CIP. Nearly $5.2 million of this being for construction of public infrastructure within the Gateway Business Park. That construction is contingent upon additional development occurring within that particular area. If that development doesn't come at this time, those projects won't be completed in 2018. But I think it is important to include funding for that within this CIP, so that maintains our flexibility to react hopefully swiftly if and when those development projects come forward. In addition to Gateway, we are planning the cannery redevelopment area and the construction of the trail along the Chippewa River, and also completion of the downtown Riverwalk extending south from the Confluence Art Center down to Grand Avenue. So there are a whole series of new investments that I would categorize as economic development and redevelopment activities within the community. So overall, if this CIP were to move forward in its entirety with the borrowings that are proposed in this capital plan, our debt service for 2019 would increase from 2018 by approximately $640,000. That additional debt service would translate into a cost of about $21.50 for the owner of that average home assessed at $150,000. We've talked about this before, but I'll just hit it very quickly. The proposed CIP does comply with all of the City Council's policies on debt and fund balance. This graph looks at our unassigned fund balance and indicates that it is being maintained between 15% and 20% of subsequent year's expenditures in accordance with our fund balance policy. The fund balance policy indicates that funds in excess of that 15% may be spent on one-time projects such as capital improvement projects. And this graph just indicates that red area is that 15% line, and indicates that the proposed CIP is well above that red area. Our general obligation debt policy indicates that we have a debt goal that is 3% of equalized value of the community, which is 60% of the maximum allowed by statute. So the City Council's policy is more conservative when it comes to debt than Wisconsin statutes. This indicates that in the red area, up to the red area is the state limit, up to the green area is the City Council debt policy, and the blue area would be the net general obligation debt through 2022 if this CIP were approved. Also, the City Council has established a measure that net direct debt should not exceed 3 times the operating revenues of the city. And once again, the red area indicates what that debt limit would be, and the green area is the area where our debt would fall if this CIP were approved. And last but not least, the levy, or the annual levy for debt service, should not exceed 25% of the total levy. This is, as we've discussed, this is the measure where we are working very hard to flatten out our debt curve, if you will, so that we're not running up against this. This graph shows the red area being the limit, that is 25% of our total levy, the green area being our debt levy under the proposed CIP. And we are getting very close, but as you can see, those lines are really running parallel in the out years as opposed to continuing to converge. That concludes my presentation. Tomorrow evening we'll be asking the City Council to approve the 2018 through 2022 CIP. By doing so, you are simply adopting this plan. As you probably all recall, the actual appropriations for 2018 will come back before the City Council in the fall as part of the operating budget, and you'll actually approve the 2018 appropriations in November. So at this point in time, the action that we'll be asking you to take tomorrow will not actually make any appropriations. Those won't occur until November. Be happy to answer questions.
Councilmember Von Hayden.
Just for a clarification, you kind of brought it up on the Gateway project, saying that in this capital budget, we have $5 million budgeted. However, it's contingent on development in that area. Other items in here that I think also read are the Dewey Street underpass. That's contingent on development in that TIF.
Yes.
And the same thing with the Phoenix Park Bridge, having funds available to do that. It's contingent on funds being raised to cover some of that.
The Phoenix Park Bridge project isn't necessarily contingent upon funds being raised for that particular project. That's actually a project that there is sufficient increment, excuse me, within the existing tax incremental districts to be able to fund that particular project. But you are correct on the Dewey Street project that would be contingent upon a project occurring within that tax incremental district to be able to fund it.
I was understanding on the Phoenix Park Bridge, there was some attempt to find funding available to pay for at least a portion of that bridge.
I believe there have been discussions along that line, but I don't believe we're making the project contingent upon that occurring.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Emanuel.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Mr. Winsens, for the work and the presentation on this, along with all of your colleagues that have made contributions to this. I have two questions regarding this. One is in regards to the City Hall proposal and changes that will come forth. There are some elements that I think are really important, although I realize we're not getting into those details today or tomorrow. Can you talk a little bit more about what the plan will be once those elements are defined, and how specifically does the public and the council get to be involved in those conversations?
Sure. In fact, we have a proposal out right now for planning services as part of the City Hall project to have a professional architectural firm come in to meet with city employees to talk about what their needs are for particular areas. What we're really concentrating on in these next stages would be the south wing of the building, if you will, the community development planning area, the engineering area, and also the city manager / attorney area. We need to redefine what those areas look like, looking at potentially taking walls down. We also need to improve the security of those areas. Right now, there are multiple access points, and there's members of the public can simply come into those areas and get back into the work areas without having any point where they might be able to be stopped. So we're really working with, at this point, really working with city staff to define what those renovations are going to look like. Another thing that we're really trying to do is restore some of the architectural features to this beautiful building that we have, or beautiful buildings that we have, really two of them. Things like we've got fireplaces that are more or less hidden in some of the areas right now, and trying to make those focal points in reception areas, but so that the public can enjoy those features. Again, we've got some wonderful skylights that we may not be able to restore as skylights, but we may be able to backlight them so that you can see them from within the building. But we're really trying to incorporate all of those elements into the discussion. And I think that once we get those plans further developed, I think there will be an opportunity for the City Council to see those plans and what we hope to do.
Thank you. I have one more question, if that's okay. My My second question is in regards to some of the transportation allocations that are proposed. One of particular is bus shelters, and knowing that that's contingent upon federal allocation. I know that we have, during our budget discussions, we talked with the city manager and yourself and asked that those dollars, if those dollars are not allocated at the federal level, then you would let us know, and also you'd have a plan. Well, what are some preliminary, I guess, contingency plans that we might be looking at if indeed those dollars are not allocated, and to continue public transportation services and amenities to the public?
Well, certainly we have the, it wouldn't be nearly as extensive of a plan, but the local share of the funding would be in there. We could proceed with that as an element. I think as we discussed during one of the work sessions, perhaps we need to be looking at other elements of our site plan approval process and those things. That hasn't been done yet. But as far as taking a look at potentially the need for additional bus shelters within the community, and then I guess related, but just recently, within the last week, I believe, we received an email from Tom Wagner, our transit manager, that there is now a federal grant program. There has been a notice of funding availability put out by FTA for activities that transit shelters or perhaps even a transit facility might fall into. So there actually is some good news on that front that just came out within the last week. So that's actually very encouraging on the transit front, because words we were receiving was that was unlikely.
Thank you.
Councilmember Strobel.
Thank you. Mr. Winzenz, I looked through my iPad here, and in the budget work session, I couldn't find it. In the budget work sessions, we talked about a fairly extensive amount of money for the remodeling of the Carson Park grandstands. I didn't see that in here. Is it still in here?
That's actually part of, is part of the 2017 projects. That's part of the, that will be part of the, it was part of the debt issues that will be coming to the council tomorrow for award, but because that fundraising effort has not been successful in reaching the goal established in the agreement, we pulled that from the debt issue. So that project is still out there. It was a project that was included for 2017, but it's not a project that's proceeding at this point in time because the fundraising effort has not been successful.
One more question for me. So would that move then to the 2018 CIP?
Well, the funding for that was actually appropriated last fall when the city council adopted the budget, or the local, our share of the funding was appropriated as part of that. But that is contingent upon the private party raising their half of the funding. So the fund with a non-recurring project like that appropriation will sit out there for 3 years, and after that 3-year period, it will lapse, or it will go away. But in accordance with the agreement the City Council approved a couple of months ago, we won't be spending any of that money until the private party raises half of their funds in accordance with that agreement.
Councilmember Mitchell, thank you. And one of the pie charts that you put up earlier, there was 1.2 million or so for parks and recreation. What's that?
I believe that is the Haymarket Plaza, the park down between the Confluence Arts Center and the and Haymarket Landing Apartments.
Councilmember Strobel.
Thank you. Just one more question for you on the amount that was in the plan for the redevelopment authority. I know you mentioned that that was trails probably in the Cannery District. Is there also some other funding for potentially purchases of property and stuff like that?
Yes, there is. In fact, there's a little bit over $1 million, including to complete the property acquisitions within the Cannery redevelopment area, in addition to the trail development. Then a future year of the CIP, I think I can't remember which year for sure. I think it might be 2021 or 2022. Is actually the development of the park itself within the Cannery redevelopment area.
Thank you.
Okay. I see no further questions from us. You might have some more. You never know. Are there members of the public who came to comment on our capital improvement plan tonight?
Hello, Jeremy Gregor at 451 Lincoln Avenue. I watched this process mostly from afar on YouTube, but it's pretty exciting for me. Thank you to Community Television. I wanted to kind of see what some of the future was going to hold for the CIP from the perspective of the way the initial meeting occurred, where there was like a broader discussion, I guess, about what some of the priorities would be for the capital improvement plan. And one of the issues that was brought forward was looking at the CIP through the lens of poverty. And I do think that there's a lot in this document that is related to that. And I do think in general it's exciting to to engage the public on these ideas of how to look at this plan a little bit more closely and look at our priorities more closely as a community. So I mean, there's things related to public transit in here. There's public spaces. There's the library. We're investing in our public buildings like City Hall and trying to make them more public. So I think that's good. I guess in the future it would be interesting to find ways to really pull out those pieces and have more of a discussion about the poverty issue in our community as part of the CIP. So that can maybe be something for next year. There's other themes, of course, that come to mind too. And recently this council passed a resolution that showed its commitment to sustainability and its recognition that we need to step up even more as a community on the goals of sustainability. And the Paris Climate Agreement can be perhaps a guide for that. And the CIP could be a place where some of those priorities are reflected next year as well. But this year, when we look at our CIP and we look at sustainability as a theme or as a lens, there's the issue of, we're spending about $10 million in vehicle replacements over the next 5 years according to the plan. Obviously that money hasn't been allocated, but it seems like an area, given our sustainability goals in transportation and fuel efficiency and things like that have not met their goals. We really have an opportunity in the CIP to look at what kind of vehicles we're purchasing. So that I just wanted to say a few broad statements, I guess, about the themes there that were discussed in some of the work sessions early on. But I do want to take some time to talk about the transit piece and the transit center. I'm on the board for the Chippewa Valley Transit Alliance, and we discussed the transit center as something that was obviously moved a year back in its timeline because of a lot of this uncertainty on the federal level, which we continue to talk about. But one of the things that was at one of your work sessions, and I guess I don't know if you could bring up the document camera. I always bring maps with me, if you've noticed this. Thank you. There's the Schlegelmuck lot was explored for a while right here. This is Farwell for context. And the current site is right here, just this little sliver actually. My highlight goes around the parking lot adjacent to that is also owned by the city. But I was an advocate during the site selection study process, although I was not a member. I was able to express that I thought that this site, this existing site with its adjacent parking should be considered as part of that site selection study so that we can actually be prepared in case we want to use that site. And apparently the city does want to take a closer look at that site, which I think is good. So on behalf of the Chippewa Valley Transit Alliance, we support the idea of the city moving this back a year so we can look at that. And also some of the other converging issues around that were mentioned in the work session too, about possibility of redeveloping some of these sites, working with the private sector that owns a lot of that, and also relooking at the future of the Gibson ramp. And there's about $1 million set aside in the plan for 2019 for this lot resurfacing and for the Gibson ramp, that maybe we could save some of that money if we did something differently than just do parking there. So it's kind of an exciting thing, even though we have to wait a year. I think it's good to look at this site more. So I just wanted to express that. Thank you.
That's it. Questions for Mr. Greger? I see none. Thank you for your input
Thanks a lot.
tonight. As the chamber is now empty of the public, I can assume there are no further requests for public input. True? That being the case, the chair will close item 5, which brings to an end our meeting for the evening. There being no further business to come before this body, on a motion by Councilmember Zhang, seconded by Councilmember Worthman, we are adjourned without objection.
The Eau Claire City Council meeting will return in a moment. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM. We now return you to the Eau Claire City Council meeting.
This meeting of the Eau Claire City Council will come to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Beaton,
Here.
Emmanuel,
Here.
Kincaid,
Here.
Klinkhammer, Mitchell,
Here.
Strobel,
Here.
T-Walt,
Here.
Von Hayden,
Here.
Well,
Here.
Worthman,
Here.
John.
Here.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk, and welcome everyone to the July 25th legislative session of the Eau Claire City Council. During its legislative session, the council deliberates and takes action on the agenda items before us. We have prepared for this responsibility by working with citizens and collaborating with staff and reading the considerable amount of materials in our packets. We arrived this afternoon ready to exercise our duty. And we welcome you who are joining us in chambers this afternoon, and as always are grateful to Community Television for broadcasting and streaming these proceedings for people who cannot attend in person. We do have important items on our agenda, so we'll get to work. The first order of business is the consent agenda. Do council members have questions or wish to remove an item for separate consideration? Seeing no such requests, on a motion by Councilmember Emmanuel, seconded by Councilmember Beaton, the consent agenda is moved and discussion is in order. There being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Beaton,
Aye.
Emmanuel,
Aye.
Kincaid,
Aye.
Klinkhammer, Mitchell,
Aye.
Strobel,
Aye.
T-Walt,
Aye.
Von Hayden,
Aye.
Well,
Aye.
Worthman, John.
Aye.
And the consent agenda is adopted. I do have one proclamation this afternoon concerning the National Night Out on Crime, and would ask Rec Supervisor Carrie Odom and Officer Kyle Roeder to meet me at the podium. We now show a little video while I'm reading. And just reading through the proclamation gives people a chance to hear about your event and think about it a little bit, and there'll be comments. So the proclamation reads thus: whereas the National Association of Town Watch is sponsoring a nationwide crime and drug prevention program called National Night Out, America's Night Out Against Crime. And the National Night Out Against Crime is designed, maybe delighted also, but is designed to heighten crime and drug prevention awareness, generate support for and strengthen neighborhood spirit and police community partnerships, and send a message to criminals letting them know that neighborhoods are organized and are fighting back. And the Eau Claire Parks and Recreation Department, the YMCA, Eau Claire neighborhoods play a vital role in assisting the Eau Claire Police Department by supporting a healthy and safe community through joint crime and drug prevention efforts, along with participation in healthy activities and wellness programs. Now, therefore, the City Council is delighted to proclaim Tuesday, August 1st, National Night Out on Crime in the City of Eau Claire, and calls upon citizens to join sponsors on August 1st at the 23rd annual kickoff event in Owen Park. A few words, please. Go first.
All right, well, Carrie really wanted to talk today, but she's letting me go because I don't get much attention usually. So it's always a pleasure to be invited here, and especially to speak on an event like this. Community and partnerships with our community is what the Eau Claire Police Department stands for. And this is an event, one of our largest events, that we get out and interact with people from all over. We expect on a good night, if the weather cooperates, we get up to almost 1,500 people in Owen Park. And it's a great collaboration between Parks and Rec and the other organizations such as the YMCA and some business partners as well. So it's a great event. We welcome everybody to come out to that, and we just appreciate your help with this, and appreciate Kathy for the pictures up here. It looks good, so thank you.
As Kyle said, we are very thankful for this opportunity to be here and accept the proclamation. This event I have been involved with in different cities since 2005, and each year it gets better and better. So Kyle is volunteering in for the 25th anniversary to possibly bring out an act. Maybe it might be him, so we'll see. But again, right in front of you is an invite with everything that we expect, and we hope to see you there. Thanks.
Does that mean something more than the dunk tank, or what?
Apparently I shouldn't have let her talk.
No.
Get volunteered for
She
things.
keeps hinting at a concert. And I'm like,
Oh.
start practicing.
She has laid the gauntlet now.
I know, now it's on
So,
public record.
That's right. Well, thank you both,
Thank you.
as always. Hey, we will continue our meeting then this afternoon with the opening of our business agenda, which begins with item 8, a resolution authorizing the Eau Claire Area Economic Development Center to conduct the Fireball Run on September 23rd and 24th. Mr. Pippinger.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
The special event application before you is a new event. The Fireball Run is a travel adventure production that follows 40 teams as they explore under-discovered locations. Eau Claire will be the starting line for the 11th season, providing a unique opportunity for top industry leaders and business executives to discover what makes Eau Claire so special. Annual viewership is over 9 million people internationally. This event will occur on Saturday and Sunday, September 23rd and 24th, and will take place in Phoenix Park and Owen Park with tubing down the Chippewa River. And the plan is for the participants to tube down from Phoenix Park over to Owen Park. They do have contingencies if the river is high. There are times that during September we do have the river is actually high and there would be dangerous, so they would have alternatives to that. Additionally, in Half Moon, they have a zorbing activity. If you have a question as far as what zorbing is, it's an example of zorbing is where you get into these big balloons and you walk on water, and I'm not sure if they'll hit each other, but you can see they can bounce around, and there'll be a route where they have to take. The starting line will take place on Sunday on South Barstow Street, and that will go start from the bridge. Basically, the cars that they'll be, the participants will be in will be lined up through here on South Barstow going from East Grand Avenue to the bridge, and they'll be heading out of town on that day. Again, I think some of us are of the age that we remember an old movie that had the Fireball Run. I think it was called it's a Crazy World or Crazy Crazy World type of thing. And these applicants cannot break the law. They need to follow all the driving and speed limits, and they're also being recorded on GPS. So from Eau Claire, they'll actually go to Rochester, Minnesota for their next stop. This event will require City Council approval due to the event expecting over 1,000 spectators and closing down a city street. The Special Events Committee recommended approval of this event at our May 10th and July 12th meetings. Additionally, the Waterways and Parks Commission recommended approval at their May 24th meeting. Ms. Christine Wasson and Mr. Ray French from the Eau Claire Area Economic Development Center are here to answer any questions that you might have regarding the event, and I'd be happy to answer any you have to.
Councilmember Bunny.
I'm just curious, how many cars will be lined up there? Do they for this event? Are those vehicles they're talking about with the Fireball Run?
There's in the whole Fireball Run, there's 40, but in Eau Claire, okay, there'll actually be, I believe, 15. Christine might want to come up and
perhaps we should call Ms. Wasson down to the podium.
Hi, thank you for having us. So there will be 40 teams and about 40 cars, including about 3 production cars, so about 43 cars total.
We'll be here in Eau Claire?
Correct.
Oh, wonderful.
Would, Ms. Wasson, would you just mind filling in maybe a few more details about what is the kind of the purpose or the expected outcome and the fun and all that stuff?
Absolutely. So Fireball Run is a very unique opportunity for Eau Claire. On the surface, it's actually the largest children's recovery effort in America. To date, they've helped recover about 50 children within 10 seasons. So we're really hoping we can get about 51 or 52 for this season. Additionally, as mentioned, it is a tourism driver. This is broadcasted internationally and streamed domestically to a viewership of about 9 million. And it highlights different communities within the nation and highlights their industry, history, what makes them unique and what makes them special. On the back end, these 40 teams are made of almost entirely business leaders and executive decision makers. So we'll be able to have the opportunity to have over 100 of these industry leaders come to Eau Claire, network with our leaders. We have Julie Tony from Xcel Energy and Luke Hansen, the executive director of the EDC, who will be a team for Eau Claire. and we'll be meeting and networking with all these people throughout the entire time, developing relationships.
Thank you. That helps us just, helps us a little bit. So we have a few more questions. You might as well stay there. Councilmember Strobel.
What were the orange dots for on here? All the different colored dots?
I think that's from Google Maps.
Oh.
Yeah, that's, the orange dots are what Google Maps use to identify eating places.
Other questions? You mentioned that if I might ask you to elaborate, it is a race. So, right, what does that mean?
It's called the Fireball Run. It's actually not a race. The way these teams win are by going out in the community and performing missions, such as the tubing or going to locate certain historical artifacts. They get points at the end of the day when they come back and show, for example, a picture of them holding an artifact or a video of them zorbing. And at the end of the day, whoever gets the most points wins in that particular community. And then that goes throughout all 8 communities. So there's no racing. Even when they're in Zorbs, they're not going to be fighting or bumping into each other. Nothing like that.
Oh, yeah, thank you for correcting that. I realize I should have said it is somewhat of a competition, such that
Yes.
you have things you have to accomplish in each city.
Correct.
So people learn about our city.
Absolutely, yes. It is a competition, but the competition isn't racing or anything like that. It's going out and learning things about the community.
Yeah. Councilmember Van Hayden.
The tubing and the zorbing, now, is that for the participants in the Fireball Run, or is that for the public?
Only for the participants in the Fireball Run.
Okay, so it's for the public to come and view and enjoy, but the actual tubing and the zorbing is the participants in the cars or whatever?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And that won't be all 40 teams. There'll be maybe about 15 because there's different tracks. So not everybody will zorb, not everybody will go tubing.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think we've come to an end of our questions, and we, thank you for helping us learn more about the event.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Pippinger, also. So on a motion by Councilmember T-Walt, seconded by Councilmember Wells, the resolution on page 26, I think it is before you. It's our duty to notify people that this event will sell food and close streets and expect more than 1,000 people. So that's what our resolution is doing. Further questions? There being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Emanuel. Aye. Kincaid.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Abstain.
Mitchell.
Aye.
Strobel.
Aye.
T-Walt.
Aye.
Von Hayden.
Aye.
Wells.
Aye.
Worthman. John.
Aye.
And that resolution passes. Good luck.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Beaton.
Aye. Oh. That resolution now really passes. It's okay, we're good. Item 9 on our business agenda, then, is a resolution authorizing the Children's Museum of Eau Claire to conduct a downtown block party and a solar eclipse extravaganza on August 21st. Mr. Pippinger.
The special event application before you is a new event. The Downtown Block Party, a solar eclipse extravaganza, is a free, family-friendly event held by the Children's Museum of Eau Claire and will celebrate the solar eclipse. This event will occur on Monday, August 21st from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. and will take place on East Grand Avenue between South Barstow Street and Graham Avenue. East Grand Avenue will be closed and barricaded off during this event. Here's an example of what this will look like. This is Grand Avenue. That will also be closed because of construction, so there's really no concern there. But they will have this barricaded off. They'll have a food truck, a music stage, photo booth, playboards, an area where they can actually view the eclipse safely, balloon animals, face paint, food truck, and a nano area. This event will require city council approval due to the event closing down a city street. The Special Events Committee approved this event at our July 12th meeting. Mr. Michael McCorney and Miss Katie Jolsrud are here to answer any questions that you may have, and I'd be happy to answer any questions too.
Thank you, Mr. Pippinger. Do the applicants wish to speak about your event?
Sure.
Mhm.
Which one? Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
So this is the first year that we've actually had a downtown block party, and really how this came about, we need to give some credit to U.S. Bank. We received a call, Sarah Hefty's here as a representative from U.S. Bank, and I received a call from Sarah earlier this summer saying they wanted to have some sort of event that they would help us put on and sponsor some of the costs associated with that. And we weren't exactly sure at the time what we were going to do, and then Katie from our team actually had the idea, along with some other folks on our team at the museum, to open or to close off the street and celebrate the solar eclipse, which is on August 21st. Eau Claire isn't necessarily in or close to the path of totality, as I'm learning about. But we will be able to view the eclipse outside, and we're going to have special glasses for folks to do that. But then also, the museum recently opened and started a program called Sky Stories inside of our building in a pop-up inflatable planetarium. And so we're going to be showing the actual a show on totality in the museum in the planetarium, which will be very exciting for folks to be able to come and see. And we're also going to do special family pricing that day. It'll be $8.21 for however many folks from a household and in the family, because it's on August 21st. So something special we wanted to do. That'll be to get in the museum, but everything on the outside will be free. So.
Do other people wish to add a comment?
So my name's Katie. I'm the one from the museum. I'm one of our educators and have been studying about it. I brought a couple things with, if you guys are curious. This is an eclipse viewer that we'll be giving out to the first 50 families who are going to attend. And Mike mentioned the really cool glasses. And that would be these bad boys right here. So each family that comes will get a pair of these. The first 50 will get this. It's a 3D printed commemorative deal. We were able to do it on a 3D printer in-house. And yeah, I'll be running the planetarium shows that take place that day. So it's a really well done, aged at about 2nd grade level, but very accessible for learners of all ages.
Last but not least, the banker. So my name is Sarah Hefty. It's good to see some familiar faces here. I've been a member of the community for about 14 years now, and I actually remember when I interned at the Children's Museum, and it was just like a sparkle in their eyes. So to come full circle and to see like this event come forward to the community, and to have my employer be able to contribute in a positive way, we are really looking forward to it. We have volunteers lined up, and being just basically kitty corner from that street, we do expect to have a nice showing from the banks. So we look forward to getting support here today for that, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you all. It helps us learn when we have new events. It's good for us to learn about how they came together and what their purpose is, so thank you for that. Any further information, Mr. Pippinger? Okay, thanks. Then, let's see, on a motion by Councilmember Von Hayden, seconded by Councilmember Mitchell, item 9 is moved. Discussion? And there being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Kincaid,
Aye.
Linkhammer,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Strobel,
Aye.
T-Wall,
Aye.
Von Hayden,
Aye.
Wells,
Aye.
Worthman, John,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
And that resolution passes. Item 10 is a resolution authorizing the issuance of $12,580,000 of general obligation corporate purpose bonds. Mr. Winzenz.
Thank you, Council President Kincaid. If it's okay with you, I would like to present items 10 and 11, both dealing with financing at the same time.
Sure.
Before you this evening are two resolutions. Those revised or updated copies of the resolutions were provided at your seats prior to the meeting. These have just been updated for the sale results of the bonds that were issued, or not issued, the bids that were received for our bonds earlier today. In addition to those resolutions are post-sale reports which summarize the results of this morning's bids. The debt that we're proposing to issue at this time is being used to fund projects that were included in the 2017 CIP, not to be confused with the 2018 through 2022 CIP, which we'll be talking about later on the agenda. So these are financing projects that were approved really last year when the City Council adopted the budget. Just running through those really very quickly. The 2017A issue is a 20-year tax-exempt general obligation bond issue that includes projects such as street improvements, bridge improvements, fire station trucks and equipment, stormwater improvements, parks, and then funding for projects in tax incremental district number 10 as well as district number 11. When we presented these projects to you a month ago for the initial resolutions, we were estimating the interest rates would be 3.105%. This morning at 10 o'clock, we received bids on the proposed bonds. We received 6 bids, so a very competitive process for our tax-exempt bond issue. The low bidder was Raymond James and Associates with a true interest cost of 2.7601%. So again, very favorable results when we compare those against what we were expecting a month ago. So we are recommending the award of the sale of our 2017 A series bonds to Raymond James and Associates, and that would be included in that resolution before you. Also today we were taking bids on our 2017 B series. These are 10-year tax-exempt promissory notes. Includes funding for street improvements, specifically our special assessment program, improvements to sidewalks and to the municipal building, to City Hall, and also some refunding or refinancing of our 2007 A, B, and C series debt. At the time the initial resolution was presented to you a month ago, we were estimating interest savings of about $523,000, and the refunding is being done for interest savings only. We were estimating the interest rates to be 2.253%. Also this morning at 10 o'clock, we received bids for these promissory notes. We received 4 bids, with Raymond James and Associates again being the low bidder, with interest rates of 1.769%. So once again, very favorable interest rates on these promissory notes. And staff is recommending the sale to Raymond James and Associates for our 2017 B series promissory notes, and the updated resolution before you reflects that. When we did the initial resolution a month ago, we had an initial authorizing resolution for a 2017 C series taxable bonds. Those were to be issued for improvements to the Carson Park Stadium. Since the Carson Park Baseball Group was unable to meet their June 30th fundraising goal, in accordance with the agreement that we have with that group, any issuance of those bonds will be postponed for a year until they're able to meet that fundraising goal. So no bids were received on those bonds. We won't be issuing those bonds at this point in time. Be happy to answer questions.
Questions for Mr. Winsens? Councilmember Stroll?
Thank you. Mr. Winsens, you, on that 10-year bonds, you did the refinancing on some of those, and you had estimated the savings was going to be about 500-some thousand. Now that the interest rate is lower, did you recalculate that, or are you saving us a little more money?
We'll be saving a little bit more money, but no, I did not recalculate it. We just got the bond results fairly late today, so I didn't have an opportunity to recalculate, but it'll be somewhere probably in the $550,000 range.
Thank you.
And I see no further questions. Thank you, Mr. Winzen. On a motion then by Councilmember Strobel, or on a motion seconded by Councilmember Zhang, item 10 is moved. Discussion? And there being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Mitchell.
Aye.
Strobel.
Aye.
T-Wall.
Aye.
Von Hayden.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
Kincaid.
Aye. And that resolution passes. Item 11 is the resolution issuing the promissory notes. On a motion by Councilmember Worthman, seconded by Councilmember Emmanuel. It is moved and discussion is in order. And there being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Aye.
Strobel.
Aye.
T-Wall.
Aye.
Von Hayden.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
Kincaid.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
And that resolution passes. Item 12 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute 2014, 15, and 17 Federal Transit Administration supplemental agreements between the city of Eau Claire and the city of Chippewa Falls. Mr. Wagner.
Thank you, Madam President. Good afternoon. The resolution before you will allow us, the city manager, to sign the agreements with the city of Chippewa Falls so that they can receive their federal funding. Two of the agreements are post-dated because in a review of their records, they realized that that wasn't done in 2014 and 2015, so that's why those are included. And then we have the one for the current year. This is a requirement of the Federal Transit Administration that only one municipality is authorized in a urbanized zone area, which the city of Eau Claire is that, and Chippewa falls in our urbanized zone area. So they have to have this agreement in order to draw down those funds.
Questions for Mr. Wagner? Councilmember Mitchell.
Thank you. I take it that even though the agreements weren't done, the funds still moved along.
That's correct. The city of Chippewa Falls answers directly to the state of Wisconsin because they have a rural system. It's called a shared ride taxi system. And so they received permission and their funding through the state of Wisconsin. But the 5307 funds that are associated with that have to come through the city of Eau Claire. So they need these agreements.
And further questions? I see none. Thank you. On a motion then by Councilmember Beaton, seconded by Councilmember T-Walt. Item 12 is moved. Discussion. And there being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Aye.
Strobel.
Aye.
T-Wall.
Aye.
Von Hayden.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
Kincaid.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
And that resolution passes. Item 13 is a resolution adopting the update of the North Riverfront's neighborhood plan as part of the city's comprehensive plan. Mr. Noel gave a nice presentation last evening. Oh, do you have more?
If you'd like.
Oh, I'll ask them if they have questions or if they want more presentation. I guess they don't. You did a fine job last night, so you can rest on your laurels. The resolution before you on page 87, the chair wishes to note that the last clause does amend the boundaries as part of the update of the comprehensive plan, as we discussed at some length last evening. So Shall consider,
Not amend.
all right, consider amending the boundaries as part of the comp plan update. Woo. That would be on page 87. Oh. Okay? You okay with that? On a motion then by Councilmember Weld, seconded by Councilmember Klinkhammer, the item is moved and discussion is in order. Councilmember Von Hayden.
Yes, I just wanted to comment on the considering the amending the boundaries. The most important thing there is it's not whether I agree or disagree with amending the boundaries. It's important that at the time this is done with the comprehensive plan, that all of the people in the ensuing area, what they want to include, is included in the discussion, so everybody is heard from, and that way then we can get the appropriate decision. It may be 100% appropriate for them to be the whole district area to be included. It may only be the outer area, but whatever it is, as long as when they do the update to the comprehensive plan, there's a full discussion on this, then there's no problem in supporting the resolution.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Thank you. I agree with that, and I think that now that there's some time that the neighborhood might want to continue to work with residents in the area, that group, the urbanites that they talked about, as well as other neighbors, but also, it's not a foregone conclusion that the boundaries are going to change. We've heard about the planning issues that are involved in considering a neighborhood as compared to a central business district, and there are differences in land use, among other things. And while the neighborhood might want to capture that extra land and commercial areas and other residences, that new area has different needs and different desires. And I think that neighborhood would want to be careful not to become sort of subsumed in this new area and lose sight of the issues that belong to them. So I hope that people don't see this amendment to consider as saying at least that I'm all in favor of changing the boundaries, because I'm not sure about that right now.
Councilmember Beaton.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really glad to hear you say that, Councilmember Mitchell. I live in that neighborhood, and I definitely see the difference in culture and needs in those two areas, and but I also see the issue with a divided neighborhood, and so I look forward to this opportunity for our city to consider both options. But I'm glad to hear that. I was definitely thinking the same thing. So.
Councilmember Worthman.
Thank you, Council President. And just to follow up on that, as someone who had been involved in that neighborhood for 7 years, I think one of the things that we're seeing in this update, in this neighborhood plan, is that the North Riverfront really wants to take strides forward. And we heard, yesterday there hasn't been a new building since, for the past 70 years, I think it was, that was mentioned last night. And I think they're looking at how do we take steps forward to, work with new residential buildings, probably to do some mixed-use development in some of the areas of the neighborhood. I think those are things that could greatly benefit the neighborhood. And so it could be that, in fact, integrating and working closer with Phoenix Park area might actually be of a positive thing in the future, if that's really the direction. But that's not to say, I think you're absolutely right, Councilmember Mitchell, that a lot of the issues are different sorts of issues, but there's also a lot of overlap. And there's literally 1 block away, there's folks that are in the neighborhood that have different kinds of challenges, but I also think that there's a huge potential for them to work together. So I'm really happy that this is being included in here and considered, and hopefully as the comprehensive plan is brought forward, that this is a real focus and yeah, something that is given its full, full time and consideration.
Councilmember Mitchell.
May I say one more thing about this? I would like to congratulate Mr. Noel and the neighborhood, though. I think it's a really good plan. And for those of us that are interested in neighborhood revitalization, I would call attention to the design guidelines on page 67. I thought they were quite creative, and a number of them that I haven't seen in other plans before, and that may be useful to upcoming plans in the coming year.
Okay. There being no, let's see, did I move this yet? I did, okay. There being no further discussion, then clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Strobel,
Aye.
T-Walt,
Aye.
Von Hayden,
Aye.
Weld,
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
Jean,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Emmanuel,
Aye.
Kincaid,
Aye.
Klinkhammer,
Aye.
Mitchell.
Aye.
And that resolution passes. Item 14 is a resolution accepting and appropriating $1 million in a grant from Healthier Wisconsin Partnership Program to be used by the Mental Health Matters Collaborative for participation in a 5-year collaboration with the Medical College of Wisconsin and community partners from law enforcement, healthcare, schools, and human services. Ms. Giese, I'm very excited to hear about the award of this grant. You were listed as the presenter.
I wasn't sure if you wanted comment or not, so
Yeah.
thank you, President Kincaid.
Sure.
We are thrilled to have a broad-based partnership in Eau Claire County and Chippewa County. This is a continuation of a grant that was approved by this body a year ago. We had a year of planning. It's 10 sites around the state of Wisconsin that are being funded by Medical College of Wisconsin to look creatively at mental health prevention work. Chippewa Eau Claire County was one of those planning sites, and we've been selected to move forward in a 5-year implementation grant for $1 million total. Following that will be 2 years of evaluation, so a total of 8 years of potential funding to look creatively at mental health. Not a magic bullet. We aren't going to solve all the mental health issues in the community, but really a chance to step back with partners to look at ways to slow down the really significant issues that we see around mental health by going upstream to work with kids and caretakers of kids, families, schools, and partners that work with children. So we're excited to bring this to you as an opportunity to move forward in Eau Claire, and it's been already a strong partnership, and we're really looking forward to the next steps.
If you don't mind, I'll see if there are a few questions. And I see Councilmember Von Hayden has a question.
My question relates to what is mental health collaboration? I mean, committee, or is that a committee or a group of people, or who is that?
Right. So the planning year involved pulling partners together, and I certainly can provide to council, and maybe that would be helpful as a follow-up, the actual partners on the list. But it does include, for example, all of our healthcare partners in Chippewa and Eau Claire County. So Marshfield Clinic, Mayo Health System, Sacred Heart are all part of that collaborative. Eau Claire School District, the Chippewa Falls School District, the Eau Claire Police Department, our Human Services Department for Eau Claire and Chippewa counties. Those are some of the partners that are involved.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Strobel?
Thank you, and congratulations again on this.
Thanks.
So the amount of the money that you're using every year is for planning and that, or is it for treatment? So you explain that maybe.
Yeah, it's an important question, so thank you for that. It is $250,000 a year, so it's not an enormous amount of funding, but the dollars will go toward working on initiatives that will really prevent mental health issues. It is not treatment funding. Efforts include looking at how do we build resilience in children and how do we support schools, in one example, to really build strategies so kids have a better toolbox as they face mental health challenges as they grow older. So it's really putting a laser focus on how can we build kids' resilience and strategies to prevent mental health issues down the road. Not for treatment. That remains an enormous issue in Eau Claire County as well as across the state, and it does continue to be an issue that the health department is focused on and with other efforts. This grant, though, is not focused on treatment.
Councilmember Beaton?
Thank you. Do you have a plan for how to sustain these efforts after the grant money is over?
Yeah, it's also a wonderful question because this is a partnership. The funding is really going toward an evaluator and a person that is organizing the collaborative right now. That's where the funding is targeted primarily. At the conclusion of the grant, really the idea is that the systems that are involved in the process, the school district, the health department, human service departments, have changed how they do business. So the sustainability will really be housed in those entities where they'll have new ways to do their work.
Councilmember Klinkhammer.
Thank you, Madam President. Ms. Giese, is any of the issues that are addressed with the funds of this grant deal with alcohol or alcohol abuse, or is that a component of mental health that is outside the traditional boundaries?
Again, an important question. We know that those challenges are not often coexisting. So certainly when we work with kids on resilience factors, we know that by doing that, we support also down the road challenges with use of substances. So they are very connected. We also, there's a lot of research and a lot of work in this grant around ACEs, and again, many of you may be familiar with adverse childhood experience. Those experiences include parents that have challenges with substance abuse, and certainly part of the work is how to not have the kids of those parents continue that cycle. So there is definitely a connection, and it's part of the work being done.
Thank you, Ms. Giese. We're grateful. And on a motion by Councilmember Von Hayden, seconded by Councilmember Mitchell, item 14 is moved. Discussion is in order. And there being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember T. Walsh.
Aye.
Von Hayden.
Aye.
Wells.
Aye.
Worthman. John.
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
Kincaid.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Mitchell.
Aye.
Strobel.
Aye.
And that resolution passes. The final resolution or item on our business agenda is a resolution approving the 2018-2022 capital improvement plan. Do council members have further questions about the content of this planning document? On a motion then by Councilmember Strobel, seconded by Councilmember Zhang, item 15 is moved and discussion is in order. And there being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Von Hayden.
Aye. Aye.
Wells.
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
Kincaid.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Mitchell.
Aye.
Strobel.
Aye.
T. Walsh.
Aye.
And that resolution passes. That opens up 3 ordinances for action tonight with item number 16, an ordinance rezoning property at 1302 115th Street from I-2 to R1A. Questions about this ordinance adoption? On a motion, oh, Council.
No, sorry.
Okay. Sometimes I miss that one. Yeah. On a motion by Councilmember Worthman, seconded by Councilmember Emmanuel, item 16 is moved. Discussion? And there being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Wells.
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
Kincaid.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Mitchell.
Aye.
Strobel.
Aye.
T. Walsh.
Aye.
Von Hayden.
Aye.
And that ordinance is adopted. Item 17 is an ordinance rezoning property at the southeast corner of I-94 and Highway 93 and to adopt a general development plan for a commercial development. Do council members have questions regarding this plan? Councilmember Worthman.
Thank you, Council President Kincaid. This may be a question for Mr. Tufti. Good evening. Just wanted to follow up, Mr. Tufti, on the issues brought up yesterday about accessibility of bicycle and pedestrians through the, my apologies, I'm forgetting the name of the road there, but Old Town, is it? At what stage would that decision be made? It's not the general development plan that we're approving
Right.
tonight, it would be
It'd
the
be
site
it'd be the development agreement.
development agreement.
Which comes back to council for final approval.
Okay.
That'll show the street design and the sidewalks or pathways that'll be proposed within the public right-of-way. The site plan that's been approved by Plan Commission already requires revisions to provide connectivity to the site or within the site itself to the main buildings.
Okay. And what about for that specific street?
For the street, that'd be, again, be the development agreement, the public right-of-way, how that gets built, the roadway widths, the bike lanes, sidewalks, paths, all that's part of the development agreement, which requires council approval, so it'll come back to council that way.
May I ask a follow-up? Thank you, Council President. Is it best for the council to wait until it comes to us or to work with you in your office ahead of time on that, or what's the best way for us to be engaged in that?
For the council as a whole to wait until it comes back to the council. Engineering staff is the folks that take care of the development agreement. You can certainly contact city engineers in the interim if you have some interest or concerns.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tufti. On a motion then by Councilmember Beaton, seconded by Councilmember T-Walt, item 17 is moved. Further discussion? And there being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Workman.
Aye.
Jean.
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
Kincaid.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Mitchell.
Aye.
Strobel.
Aye.
T-Walt.
Aye.
Von Hayden.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
And that ordinance is adopted. Item 18 is an ordinance rezoning property on the north side of Stonewood Drive, east of Mill Run, from C2P to R3P, and to adopt a general development plan for a memory care and assisted living facility, and to approve a CBRF. Council members have questions about this item on our agenda? On a motion then by Councilmember T-Walt, or Weld, sorry, Councilmember Weld, seconded by Councilmember Klinkhammer. Item 18 is moved and discussion would be in order. And there being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Jean.
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
Kincaid.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Mitchell.
Aye.
Strobel.
Aye.
T-Walt.
Aye.
Von Hayden.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
Workman.
Aye.
And that ordinance is adopted. We have two ordinances for introduction tonight. The first is an ordinance rezoning property located north of LaSalle Street, adjacent to McKinley Road, from TR1A to R1P, and to adopt a general development plan for a single-family development with reduced front yard setbacks. And lastly, an ordinance for introduction amending the City Code of Ordinances to consolidate stormwater and parcel grading requirements to conform with state requirements. Do council members wish to suspend the rules and take up either item? I see no such request. Announcements are in order. Mr. City Manager.
I have none tonight, Madam President.
We do have a work session immediately following this meeting. We will be adjourning here and moving up to the North Conference Room for a meeting lasting less than an hour. So, just to give you, if everyone's texting your families, you'll know. There being no further business then to come before this body, on a motion by Councilmember Emmanuel, seconded by Councilmember Beaton, we are adjourned without objection.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the City of Eau Claire. A transcript of this meeting is available for the hearing impaired. It will be available within 7 days of this telecast. Call 715-839-4912 or TDD 715-839-1689. Or write Eau Claire City Clerk, P.O. Box 5148, Eau Claire, Wisconsin 54702-5148. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.